right, so episode 1, All Things Arm Wrestling. So basically, I wanted to start this thing where people are going to find arm wrestling, and they're new, the same way we did. And the perspective is, we're going to talk about everything that you need to know that's happening now, and that's just happening in general in your arm wrestling trajectory. So I always like to think of the new people. So like, remember when we first met and we were like kind of a lot newer than we are now?
Oh yeah.
And the kind of things that go through your head.
Yeah.
So like, what kind of things go through your head? So like, I have this list of things that we could talk about. Like, let's see. Well, first of all, arm wrestling is one word. It's not two words. It's not arm and wrestling. It's arm wrestling.
Like autocorrect
so if you
always.
ever want to write it, it's one word, and that's how you're going to find it. So All Things Arm Wrestling ATA podcast. That's where we're at here. So the thing that I keep running into is in the mindset of an arm wrestler is when I'm talking to people who have no idea why you're going to like it. They you know what they're thinking? They're like, okay, why arm wrestling? And then they're also thinking things like, well, what do I need to know about arm wrestling?
How not to break your arm?
Well, that I don't already know.
Yeah.
So like the arm break thing is really interesting because I want to get into that.
Yeah.
But so people do break their arms. But I mean,
there's ways not to.
As far as the possibility that you're going to break your arm, as long as you're not a moron, it's a very small possibility.
And I think as soon as you start gripping up with people in arm wrestling, other people of, especially experienced people, you realize that it's a position, that if you're not going to jam yourself in that position, the arm break's most likely not going to happen.
Yeah, and isn't it about like being aware of what hurts or what feels bad?
Yeah, I mean, how I was told, and I've only been arm wrestling for a year-ish now, was arm tucked, and if your hand gets outside your shoulder and you're not pulling back and you start trying to go sideways and all this and you turn away, that's why they tell you to watch your hand. If you turn away and there's a lot of pressure, it only takes 14 pounds of pressure to snap the
absolutely. So
bone back there.
Once you always remember that.
Oh yeah, that's like
that little bit of. It's like if Steven Seagal grabs you in a movie, he's gonna break your arm in a second, and you're gonna go, "How did he do that?" It's because he spun you around. You're looking over there. Your arm's crazy, and he just goes click,
spiral fracture.
That's what you're gonna do on an arm wrestling table if you're being stupid, right? Yes, it does happen to people when they're not being stupid, but that even gets like orders of magnitude more rare.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, talking to guys who've done it for a long time. One guy, he's been arm wrestling for 5 years. He said he's seen 2 arm breaks. Mm-hmm. And that's after like thousands of matches, years in the sport. And it was one, he said, was a guy had no business being on a table at a tournament, just entered himself in there, was probably likely drunk and tried to go sideways, and it just went. And the other one was just a freak thing. Guy was in a good position. It just went. So
one of the things I wrote here that I want to talk about is when you first start, what is it that you don't know? Or in the same way, that question can be asked, what have you learned? So like, talk to me about in the year or so that you've been arm wrestling compared to when you first started. And you were like, I wouldn't say first started, like when you first got into it, right? Because we both got into it similar ways or maybe different ways, whatever it is, right? YouTube, Devin Larratt, everyone's going to be talking about like, oh, you most likely got into it because of YouTube and Devin Larratt. If you didn't find it through YouTube and Devin Larratt, how the hell did you really find it, really? That's like the first thing on the list, right? So let's just start there. What have you learned doing it the amount of time that you've been doing it compared to when you started? It's
so much information. And I think within the first year, you realize how guys chase this thing for 30 plus years in this sport.
How could that possibly be interesting for 30 years?
I think it's
like how could something so inane?
Devin put it perfectly. It's the feeling you get, the raw emotions of being on a table. Like in a fight, even just in practice, the community is fantastic. Especially in New York. Everybody I've met is very, very open, willing to teach you.
Well, that's one thing I want to say. So out of doing all this stuff and meeting all the people, hands down, I have yet to meet a true asshole or somebody I didn't like through arm wrestling. You know, it's like you meet people, and not only do you not run into jerks, you also realize how cool everybody is.
Yeah, it's like almost like everybody's trying to check their ego at the door, like before they get on the table. And yes, during the tournaments and super matches, the energy's crazy, but there's a lot of mutual respect. I don't know. It's a fascinating thing. I mean,
yeah, and the thing about the ego is like you'll hate this sport if your ego's too big. So
yeah, because you're going to lose a lot.
You have to check your ego, right?
Yeah.
And once you check your ego, you start to interact with people without an ego. It's like you're like, wow, like why? It's like this. It's like you joined some really weird support group
or a cult.
Yeah, and you're like, I don't even understand why I'm doing this, but it's so awesome because I didn't realize it was going to be like this, and I have to keep doing it.
You start going down the rabbit hole. It's like you just.
But besides that, like we're talking about some social aspect. I don't even really care about that because think about it this way. Let's say we have listeners who are like, oh, I just got into arm. Let me hear what these guys have to say because we're going to talk about all kinds of things, current events, stuff like that. What are people doing or not doing, right? But really deep inside, like when you go to sleep at night, there's a chance that the last thing you're going to think about is arm wrestling.
Yeah.
And then when you wake up in the morning, where is arm wrestling on the list of the first things that you think of?
If I'm not checking myself, it's usually the first and last thing in this last year and a half.
See? So that
arm wrestling journey.
That pretty much defines.
And I think about it a lot. Why is it so consuming? I think with COVID, it's been an amazing distraction to put yourself into something that's physical and you're out meeting new people. But I did see a T-shirt that I think it's Devin's shirt. It says "Arm wrestling's a disease," and I feel there's some truth to that. Like once
it infects you.
I'm an actor, and it's like getting bit by that acting bug almost. Like where like you can't get enough of it. Like you want to keep going down further to see what this has to offer.
It's dimensionality, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of dimensions to arm wrestling, and then for me it was scary at first because you're whole like I don't want to.
Well, why was it scary? Because
the arm break.
People are so scared. That
I think
they won't
watch
even
the
try
YouTube
it.
videos of people snapping their arm and it doesn't look like they're doing something crazy.
Can I just say something? I've never been afraid of breaking my arm ever going into arm wrestling. Never. It's
really?
Never crossed my mind that my arm's going to break.
That's funny. I think about it like every practice.
If it wasn't for that, was there anything else scary about it? Let's say if you never thought about arm breaking?
I mean, the obvious thing is the fear of failure. Making a fool of yourself, being bad at it. But then when you do those things and you realize the good outweighs the bad, like, I'm going to lose an arm wrestling match against someone who's done it a lot longer. Who cares?
Yeah, I think that's when you're like a big tough guy and your ego's like inflated, you're going to use I won't do it because I'm going to break my arm thing. But really, the thing you won't say is the number 2 part that you said.
You're afraid of losing,
Yeah,
like
right.
How
Isn't
fragile
that what
is your
it
ego, like getting.
Because then that hurts more. Because then you're alone at night crying yourself to sleep, and there's no one there to console you about that feeling.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And none of us wants to break our arms. Like I don't even have health insurance. If I broke my arm, that's going to be horrible, right? And then I can't do anything for 8 months or whatever.
Oh yeah, I mean that's like a year to come back from.
Yet I'm not afraid of that, and I think I'm only not afraid of it because I understand how
to protect
as long
yourself.
as I'm pulling correctly and I'm not doing crazy stuff outside of practice, because practice is not crazy, right? No. So that's number 1. So to me, practice is safe. And then number 2 is as long as I know how I'm pulling, I won't allow myself to go into an arm break. And then the only thing that could possibly scare me about an arm break is there might be something I don't know about my body that will allow that bone still to break, right?
I mean, that's where we're talking about the freak stuff and then any underlying causes.
Osteoporosis.
Yeah. If you're testing yourself physically, I mean, you watch sports, like things can happen,
Well, you kind of got to ask yourself, like, what's your history of bones breaking?
Yeah,
if you're fragile.
Knock on wood, none.
See, I already broke 2 bones in my life, but they're little bones. I broke a finger and a toe.
Oh, okay, yeah, those are
okay. Never broke huge bones. I mean, I maybe cracked a couple bones by accident, a rib or something like that.
Yeah, I've definitely done a rib, but never like a straight break, So,
So
just funny. I don't know why I'm afraid of it. I think just I've had a lot of injuries, and another catastrophic injury and being laid up for a year just seems so daunting. But then I don't know, some guys come back from it stronger and hungrier, from a bicep tear.
Well, I almost wonder if something like a bicep tear is more possible than an arm break.
I think most likely, yeah.
Yeah, so to me, that's scarier.
Especially the positions I get in.
What happens if the tendon rips off the damn bone? And then I'm like, oh, okay, it didn't break, but I think I have to get this fixed. So that's terrible, right? But let's move off that topic for a second. Let me ask you this. Like, as a new person that got into it, why did you get interested in it? I think you kind of answered that, but...
Well, I can say a few years ago, I'm one of the guys that got interested by YouTube. I actually hated Devin Larratt at first. I thought he was cocky.
I hated him too.
Yeah.
I
couldn't wait to him to lose.
So we both watched him, hated him.
Yeah.
I was watching this thing and I was like, who's that guy who looks like such a dick?
He looks like a douchebag.
But then suddenly, somehow that turned right around.
I love him. I think he's...
And you're like, oh my
awesome.
God, that guy's not a dick at all. He just seemed like a douche.
I think it's his competitive edge where he's literally at war at that table.
When you don't know him and you see him at the table, you're like, that guy's a douchebag.
No, but he's really taking it that seriously.
Yeah.
And if someone else isn't, he's going to, and that's where his competitive edge comes in. But when he lost to Michael that one time at Wall, I loved it. I was so happy to see that happen. And I thought Michael was a really cool arm wrestler. So
let's talk about that. So like people who are like not that familiar, like they don't even like we could like skate right by that. And people are like, what did he say?
Yeah.
So that's how I got into it. I see that WAL match where Devin Larratt loses. What was it? 2018.
Yeah, something like that.
So let's say I think it was 2018. He lost to Michael Todd. Michael Todd gets the hammer, but like I also was like, oh my God, that guy is an asshole. Look, that guy's a dick, right? Devin Larratt. So it's weird. This weird thing happened where it's like, oh, the guy who's a total dick at the table lost, but the guy who beat him, look at how he beat him. It doesn't look fair. So it was this whole thing where Michael under the table Todd.
So much shit. He catches
for years,
so much.
Right? Yeah. Everybody was hating on him, but he was the winner. Devin Larratt, the dick, lost. So everything was like in equilibrium. But then you start watching and you get to actually see the person that Devin Larratt is, not when he's at the table.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, so he's not, he just comes across that way because he's from Canada and he's kind of tall and lanky and he's got that like weird mullet or whatever. And it's like, oh, I get it now. It was all like, that's just how he looks. So if you think about it, like if you're a successful or even top tier arm wrestler, you should absolutely come across as a dick on the table. And that's how you know you're in the right place.
That's true.
Right? That's the way I see Devin Larratt. He'll never look like a dick to me anymore, but like when you first see him, you're like, who is this guy?
Yeah, why is he taking this so seriously?
Like, does he live in a trailer? You're thinking, and you're like, what is that? That's so that you're looking at him going, oh, he listens to Nickelback, right?
Yeah, right.
You're
yeah,
like, just everything. You're just like, I can tell from looking at him, like it's all bad, right? And then you're like, oh no, he's actually cool. So let's see. We went over how we found out about it. So I would say YouTube, right?
Yep.
And it's like this whole thing. One thing, because we're talking about Devin Larratt, the most important thing everyone's got to know, if you don't know it, is he created ArmBet. If he didn't create ArmBet is why we're here.
That's why we're sitting here.
So like we pay total homage to ArmBet.
Yes, thank you, Devin, for creating ArmBet.
Yeah, like without that, where the hell would we be, really? Because think about how crazy this is. People still don't know what ArmBet is, right? And in the middle of COVID, ArmBet launches, and then if you tell somebody who's a non-arm wrestler, what do they say? Oh, that's ridiculous. What, in the middle of COVID, you guys are going to meet up? Yes, that's exactly what we're doing. And they look at you and they go, oh, yeah, I could see. Oh, it does make sense. What? So that's the other thing about arm wrestling is it in this time, I found out about arm wrestling before COVID hit. So I'm learning before all this bullshit, before the world turned to shit, right? We're learning. Now in the middle of the learning, everything gets shut down. And then it's like this 6-month period of what the fuck.
Yeah, what are we going to do now?
And then Armbeck comes out. And it's like, yeah, everyone, come out of your houses, meet up like it's fucking Grindr.
I know.
And we're going to fucking arm wrestle. And it's all dudes, right?
Yeah,
so it's
it
like
literally
the
is. It's
gayest app ever.
It's Grindr
you're
without the
meeting up
fucking.
with dudes.
Yeah. You're
right?
fighting instead
and
of
you're
fucking.
just like, oh, we're not going to butt fuck. We're going to fucking arm wrestle.
It is a little bit like a dating app at
It's
first. You're like,
hilarious,
you're
right?
close. You have a table? Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It's me tonight.
Yeah.
Right.
and it started, and it's like, I had already had a table because I realized really soon, after months and months of watching, I was like, I need a table. Otherwise, I'm not going to learn shit. So, because you need to know the size of the table, the dimensions of the table.
It's so different once
the
you're...
feeling at the table.
Yeah.
You can't learn anything
No,
without
you can do
a
it
table.
here and like there's similar things, but
you'll never understand fully.
yeah.
So I was
you're
like,
fighting
okay,
on the table.
let me just plunk down the credit card. Let me get this table. Let's see what happens. Let's see how long it takes
I thank you
to
for
make
that
it.
because I almost bought one myself and I have no place to put it.
And
it was
well, so what's crazy is I get this table, Armbeck comes out, you come over, other people come over, we start meeting, right? And then eventually it gets enough where I'm like, I got to get another table. This is not good enough.
Right.
Thank you, Armbeck again. Yeah. That's my second table, the
Great
Armbeck
table.
table. Yeah, so
beautiful.
Totally
looking.
works out. Different, first combat arm sports table, fantastic top tier table, and
Beautiful
then the Armbeck table next to
Yeah.
it. They're both like they're complementary. They're great tables.
They get the job done.
Yeah, so awesome. And then so let's talk about the big names in arm wrestling. So obviously Devin Larratt is like number one. He always was number one in my mind, right?
He's definitely the most popular.
And now he recently had a match with Michael Todd after his loss in WAL that we're talking about. Now WAL has been shut down because of COVID, so they haven't had an official match. So this is an unofficial match. What was this match really? He went to Dubai.
I mean, he shipped him the hammer back. He got the hammer.
He
back,
got the legacy hammer, right?
The
It's not a
legacy
WAL hammer,
but it was a wall hammer at one point. But
right. So the thing is, what people don't understand is that I didn't know this, right? So there's a WAL hammer, which Michael Todd still has. He's the WAL champ.
So I didn't know that he still has his
because there's
WAL
no,
hammer.
there hasn't been a WAL match to contest his title.
Yeah,
But
'cause their season just didn't happen since COVID.
It's only because of COVID. But because we will not sit here idly. They were like, well, we're going to make this match happen. And they got together outside of WAL.
They're Mavericks, man.
And Devin Larratt won, and he got the legacy hammer.
Yeah, big shout out to Larry Wheels for
That's why it happened, right?
The
'Cause
opportunity.
They had to go all the way to Dubai to do this.
And Larry's creating so many arm wrestler fans out there.
So let's
the
talk about
popularity
Larry
of
Wheels. Let's talk about Larry Wheels a little because he's not an arm wrestler. Yet he is an arm wrestler because he's been doing it so diligently that you can call him an arm wrestler now. Whereas really he's just an Instagram strength lifter, right?
But he is one of the greatest power lifters.
He's like one of the strongest
on
guys on
record
the planet
to ever live. And arm wrestling's a strength sport. So I think guys who are used to lifting heavy weights and as your knees go and your back go, you still want to test yourself physically with that strength. And I think arm wrestling's great sport for that.
So why is arm wrestling for you? I always say arm wrestling is for everyone. So
it is for everyone.
Arm wrestling is for you if you're super strong, right? Mm-hmm. You might be super strong at arm wrestling. You're gifted at arm wrestling and you might not know it, right? So why not take advantage of it, right?
And that's the beauty of this thing is you don't know until you get on the table.
And then if you're injured and you're not an athlete anymore and you're like depressed, guess what? If you have arms and shoulders and joints,
we're working out.
Get into arm wrestling. So here's why, though. Arm wrestling, turns out, is not an age-restricted sport.
That's the best thing.
That's what it is. You don't have to be young to be the greatest. No. It helps, right? It can help. Like, because another name that we didn't get to yet, John Brzenk, right? The greatest of all time.
Yeah, the goat of arm wrestling.
This fucking guy, what people still don't understand, so there's levels to this. There's levels of understanding. I tell people, that movie from 1987 with Sylvester Stallone in it? There are people that look at me and go, no, I don't know that movie. And I'm like, oh my God.
Like Rocky?
Well, let's say most people know. And then they're like, oh yeah, I remember arm wrestling movie, right?
Over the top.
Okay, well, guess what? So the guy that Sylvester Stallone plays is actually John Brzenk because that was a real tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And John Brzenk
Won
that tournament that they were filming in the movie.
He won that truck.
He won that truck. There were two of them. So there was a one for Sylvester Stallone. He got that. And there was another one that John Brzezinski got. And that was real. But here's what it really
I still think they say that's the biggest prize ever won.
Yeah, because it amounts
tournament.
to like
it's
what
like
did
$200K. That I mean, a tractor trailer with the whole bells and whistles.
Definitely worth
it was
like
like
$250,000. Yeah, easily
around there.
And then if you factor in there was more to the prize though. It wasn't just the truck.
There was something else. There was
cash
prize too, I think, because he won his division, which was cash prize for that, and then the truck, and then another cash prize for overall, I believe. But over the top.
The thing that boggles my mind is so John Brzezinski is 57 years old now. When he won that thing, he was 22 years old.
That's insane.
Right?
Yeah.
And he weighed like 190 pounds.
Giant killer. He was beating guys. He's got wins over Cleve Dean, who at the height of his weight weighed close to 600 pounds.
Right,
you know?
monster.
Like that guy walking to the table,
right.
You know? And then you got little trim John Brzezinski, who just has tendons of steel and a hand that'll stop the world.
Now, let's talk about, because John Brzezinski is coming back. Yep. So he's training now. And he's training for the top 8. People don't know what the top 8 is. Like later in my understanding, I started to understand there's this thing, the Zloty Tour in Poland every year. And that's where all of Europe converges on, I don't know, what do you call that? It's like is it like the world title?
I think Zloty Tour is the World Cup of arm wrestling. From what my understanding. Now, is top 8 part of that tournament?
Yeah.
Is it the super matches that are happening at that tournament?
I don't even know exactly. So I feel like top 8 and Zloty Tour happen together, but they're separate somehow. Yeah. Right?
I almost think
there's so much to learn about this. Yeah.
So I think it's super matches. Then the winners of each super match go on to win who's the best, I think.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I didn't even know he was making a comeback.
These are things that we're going to look into and have to explain, right? Yeah. So the other thing is so the top names have been doing this since the early 2000s, if you want to just go back a few years, right?
Yeah.
So now we've got Travis Bagent, okay?
Yeah.
I learned about him later, one of my favorite characters, right? The mouth, right? He's basically the mouth, right? Have you ever seen Man Mom? Are you familiar with Man Mom?
No, what's Man Mom?
Oh my God. So I'm so glad I said it. Everyone listening to this, look up Travis Bagent, Man Mom, or just look up Man Mom, and it is
what is this?
The funniest fucking thing ever. That's all I'm going to say for now. And then
I'll have to watch this later.
And because there's layers to Travis Bagent that make him who he is. And Man Mom is one of those serious fucking layers. Let's see. Okay, so here's another big question. Can women do it?
Of course. Yeah.
Right. So
there's multiple world champion women out there.
But you said, of course, as if it's like, why wouldn't you?
They have muscles, they have shoulders, they have arms, they have hands.
How many women do you talk to who just like say, what? Get out of here.
Most of them are like, what? Nah, I'm not going to do that.
It doesn't even sound like it's a thing for them, right? And I don't know, why is that?
They're probably not as stupid as us men, willing to test themselves. But
what's funny about that is, how many times I get women to try it out, and they're so fucking strong in certain ways, and you're just like, come on, and you're just gonna not do this.
Yeah.
And then there's some, what it is about arm wrestling, because it's not just women that do that; it's men too who do that.
Oh yeah,
they're just not. They don't have the interest. There's something about it where they're like, oh, whatever, And I'm just like, how could you just whatever this? Like, do you not understand? The power? We both. I always think about my cousin Chris when I talk about this kind of thing.
The wrist,
because he's so powerful in the hand and the wrist that I often have this thought: like, if I could just borrow his arm or his body, just give me your arm. If I had the ability to just switch out his body and just take it for a ride, I would just go to town on the entire East Coast,
training
and then
like
give
crazy.
it back to him, and I'll just be like, "Thank you, here you go." That was fun. Because what I have right now is going to take 2 years to just feel like, oh, okay. And like, if I want to be impatient about it, I'll be like, Chris, can I borrow your arm? That somehow you don't want to get involved in this amazing sport.
That's another thing. Like, if you're not into it, you're not into it.
And you can't explain to someone why they need to get into it.
But I don't think you know until you actually do it. It's easy to judge it from looking out of it, but until you go to a practice.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, look at
like,
my cousin Chris. He'll go to the practice and then he just doesn't give a shit. And it's like, well, at what point is he ever going to care?
Maybe
I don't think it's in it for him.
Like,
he doesn't have that thing to care.
He doesn't seem like that competitive, like, I need this in my life to keep
But I'll tell you what it is, and this is what gets people in and out of arm wrestling, because you'll never know. It's also very psychological. So deep inside, people have fear of failure.
Yeah. I think a lot connects to that.
That'll like make, when you're like, oh, I don't understand what it is, why they don't do this. It's always fear of failure.
Yeah.
And then
that's for like most things,
Yeah.
anything that seems scary. It's easier to just.
Yeah. And it's like, what I don't understand is like, I am so fearless that I'm just like, look, I got nothing to lose. So all I can do is try to get better and work my ass off to get to the point where some of these people come to the table literally gifted.
Already at this level.
And I'm like, you're so gifted. Like, now if you put 2 years in that I got to put in just to get to where you are, imagine where you would be, right? So I feel like, oh, that's a wasted opportunity on their part. But, oh, well, like, I can't do that. I can't leave this body and borrow their body, so whatever. So I'm just not going to think about it. But do women do it, right? So who are the women that do this? Like, what types of women? Is this not an American thing? Is it, like, mostly European?
I mean, from what I know, it's definitely more popular over in Europe and Russia and Poland.
It seems more normal.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah.
I think it's more of like part of the culture as in a way to exercise.
Here, it's considered abnormal for a woman.
I never saw an arm wrestling table until probably, like, actually saw one in person at a gym or anything until probably like a few years ago.
Yeah. Just the idea of like, oh, what does it look like?
Yeah,
how tall is it?
What do I do with the peg?
Like, that's so weird. It's those pads and you got whatever, right? It's just so awkward, right?
But the women that come to mind, Sarah
Bachman,
Bachman, whatever. She's gorgeous, and
isn't she like Swedish or Swiss?
Yeah, she's Swiss, I think. She's top tier, jacked, beautiful. I mean, she's a real arm wrestler.
What about that one woman that's on the arm wrestling TV channel now?
Oh God, Irina?
Yeah, Irina Gladkaya.
Yeah.
So what's funny?
I'd heard about her from Devin's channel before, and I remember looking her up.
Well, if you watch the top 8, she's like the one who like won the fucking overall.
Yeah, like she's a. I want to grow up with her and see what that feels like.
Right.
Because do I have a chance against...
That's the other thing. Like, most people find arm wrestling through Devin and through Alex Toproll.
Yeah.
Because they're the most popular YouTube channel. Schoolboy, right?
Yeah.
So that's something we kind of forgot.
A beast in the making, yeah.
So it's interesting that they're always trying to find a cool video to show you like, oh, this will get 1 million views. So recently it's been Irina coming. She's on the beach.
Yep.
No man can beat her, and it's like, oh wow! Did you see the video of her in the gym doing the training?
I just watched it today, I think.
Yeah, so once you see how she's moving those weights and how heavy they are, and like how she trains, you're like, oh, okay, well that makes sense. You got to be really strong just to hammer.
She's a great example for the women who are afraid to do strength sports because of bulking up.
Yeah, because look at the way she looks. She looks
like an ideal. Yeah. Like she looks like an aerobics instructor.
But what's funny is when you get women in a bar competing, what do they all look like? They look like transgender men or something, right? You're just like, so most women are gonna be like, I don't want to look like my grandma or something.
But as I watch a lot of the arm wrestling TV and all the other arm wrestling channels on YouTube, and I watch the different tournaments out there, and there's definitely a lot more women getting involved. Like the female classes are getting a little.
It's definitely increasing.
Yeah, and they're not your typical butch, biker looking chick. Like there's a lot of different people getting into it right now, and I think YouTube also, to wind it back to why get into it, coronavirus. Like when you couldn't do it, I remember being interested in this sport for a couple of years, and it's just like I don't want to do it, And it was fear of failure. And then when you couldn't do it for a whole year and a half, it was like, man, I really wasted time not getting into this earlier.
Well, now we're 30 minutes into this thing. Let me tell you my personal experience, right? Because I have a personal experience that maybe no one else has, but I think I'm pretty normal and pretty average. So the reason why I'm so excited about this, and it never dies, the excitement doesn't die. It only multiplies, right? So maybe the people that are like not into it, they don't understand how that could even be. And maybe they're kind of like, they're not imaginative enough, or they don't have goals for themselves. They don't care. Maybe they just view reality in a different way.
Yeah.
Where it's like they walk around and like the voice in their head is like not at all. Like if you switch minds with them, you'd be like, oh my God, this is their reality. Like it's not even the same world. Like send me back, right? So the thing is, like, I've been always lifting weights for not really strength training, but more like the kind of the Arnold style of lifting weights, which is also
bodybuilding. Yeah,
it's not powerlifting, but it's similar. So you're still doing squats for maximum weight, and maybe the reps are more than powerlifting, because powerlifting you're not doing more than 5 reps. So then, but you're still doing a lot of heavy compound movements. You're doing bench presses.
Yep.
You're doing things like deadlift. You're doing things like rows. You're doing overhead presses
to build overall strength.
Yeah, and then like, because when I was a little kid, it was always about like being small and weak, right? And I'm like, well, now I have a chance to change this, right? Yeah. So that's just been my whole life. And nobody in my family is huge and muscular. Everyone's like a skinny, small, wimpy person, unless they worked out in their youth. They were maybe like ripped and powerful and strong in certain ways, maybe a little bit gymnastic. But once they all reached their 40s and above, they all deteriorated to nothingness, right? So I'm like, well, that's not going to be me, okay? Yeah. I'm just going to keep on climbing, because that whole let yourself go thing or settle down, no, not interested, because I see what happens. They look at you and they're like, oh, look, he doesn't have abs anymore. Getting a little fat, huh? That kind of thing, whatever, right? Whatever it is that people say. Not that I care about that kind of stuff anymore. Like,
but it's out there, it's a natural thing, and it's what are the options to jump off your point?
Be healthy and strong, right?
Or let yourself go. The let yourself go is just full of pain and misery.
Yeah, it's not going to lead to a good thing. But
no.
So here's enter arm wrestling. So I have no problem with lifting weights, and I'm just dieting, lifting weights, and I'm on top of it. But then enter arm wrestling. Now I'm like, oh, wait. Decades of lifting weights, and I suck at arm wrestling so bad. Oh, that I feel
that's
like
the frustrating part about it.
So now I'm like, well, how do I deal with this? Because I think I like arm wrestling. Well, how do I deal with this? I'm not just going to say no and run away from it like a little bitch, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to be like, but I like arm wrestling. It's a challenge. How do I get better at this? Because I hear everyone saying, you can get better at it. There is no age limit. You only get stronger. And I'm like, and I see my weak points. So what am I thinking? Well, let me train. Yep. So what has arm wrestling done for me? Let me tell you something. It's actually gotten, lo and behold, my arms stronger. And it's like, now that I do like the regular gym stuff, my arms are so much stronger now than they've ever been. And they really never were anywhere anyway to begin with. Let me tell you something. Yesterday, I was out here. I had to install lights on the outside of my house. And in order to do it, I have this hammer drill, right? And this hammer drill, the first time I used it, like almost 10 years ago, you pull it out, and it's like the biggest drill you've ever seen in your life, right? And it's got like this handle that you have to hold with your other hand, right? It's nothing ridiculous like the kind of drill that you need to drill through a cinder block wall, which I've had. That's like you're in a Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, like Predator, like with a machine gun. But this is like the biggest fucking drill you're gonna hold, right? In general. And now I get up there on a ladder. I'm literally holding this thing with one hand all the time.
And your wrist doesn't give out.
Not even thinking about it. And and I lift it up like this into the wall, and I'm drilling the whole time just with one hand, because I'm like, I'm strong enough just because armless wrestling to do all of this with one hand. And I'm like, arm wrestling's awesome. And I'm only 7 months into the consistent week after week training
and practice. And that's part of the addiction of it. Like when you start making those incremental gains and you start figuring out the different vectors and angles.
Let's talk about, how do you train for it? So...
Oh, God, I do. I think what 90% of people do. You watch the YouTube videos of the arm wrestler you like, and you start doing what they're doing.
Which is what? So like when you're a noob and you don't know nothing, talk about what the mistakes are when you start versus what you should do when you start.
I think from what I know at this point, focus on this movement right here. Cupping your wrist is like everybody talks about this, and there is angles of that, and they all play a part. But the guys who have really strong flexion and cup,
it's all about the cup, isn't it? Like if you don't have the cup,
you can have riser for days, but if you can't take someone and cup them over and get this position,
you've got so much
and
more
vice
to
versa.
go.
If you can grab this position and hold it for a long time, you're already going to be a decent arm wrestler.
Because the guy who has the cup and can't lose the cup is most likely the guy who's winning.
Most likely.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because there's other ways you can lose, but let's say in the best case scenario, you won't allow yourself to lose in those other ways. If you have your cup, you're not losing. Like let's look at so coming up soon is going to be this John Brzenk match with Chance Shaw, right? Perfect case. So if John Brzenk never loses his cup, he's not losing. He's not even losing one match. I think
if he gets this position,
right,
you're not pulling him out of that.
Yeah.
Even a 300-pound Chance Shaw.
And the thing about Chance Shaw is he's 23 years old. They call him a prodigy. He's really young. He's 300 pounds. He's super strong. He's got some years under his belt. He somehow finagled this match with John Brzenk, so good for him. But you know what?
He just cleaned up at the Fatal 4-Way, and he cleaned up some big names in arm wrestling right now that have been around for a while.
Who are some of those names that he beat?
Mike Aiello, he
beat Mike Aiello.
Absolute unit. He beat him.
Yeah.
Jordan Sill, which interesting. John Brzenk's match he just had. He said he gripped up with, this is, mind you, not competitive, but after the tournament, he gripped up with Jordan Sill, and he said he couldn't do anything with him. So, and then Chance Shaw smashed Jordan Sill.
Yeah. So
and he smashed Don Underwood, who's making a comeback right now. He's been in the sport forever.
Right.
These guys are all beasts.
Let me ask you this. Have you seen any of those matches?
I watched them all. Yeah.
So is Chance Shaw smashing these people one way, or is he really adept and he's smashing them all different ways?
He's a top roller. He's getting
got one bag of tricks.
Height for days, and he's getting that cup and he's going sideways.
So and let's talk about like little things real quick. So is Chance Shaw one of these guys that's got super long arm?
He looks like it, but he also looks stout at the same time,
But I'm saying, like, yeah, we all know that he's a big, thick dude, right? But, like, maybe his fucking arm bone's really fucking long, which gives you another advantage, right?
And he looks like he's got a thick frame, too. Like, his bones are probably thick as hell. You know? So that length does give you an advantage off the start when you're pulling backwards to who's getting the high ground. And I don't know, I haven't heard anything about his hand. I don't know how big his hand is, but I know he's got some crazy side pressure and he's fast. So those are some deadly combinations.
Oh, the speed.
Yeah.
So that's another thing, right? Speed is a very integral thing in this.
Speed can beat strength in this sport.
Yeah. And it's a major.
Understand it first.
It's it's almost as important as the strength because when you're in practice, you're not doing speed. You're holding for time and you're doing all that stuff. But then once you put speed into it, it's like a drag race. The first guy off the line, if he keeps it going, he's going to win. You can't be the second fucker off the line.
No. Because you're already at a disadvantage. If you're on ready to go, whoever's got their side of the table is already won half the battle. If you're starting over here.
There's going to be so much for us to talk about as far as intricacies. Because you know what the other thing, when I started getting into this, through channels like, let's see, Voice of Arm Wrestling, right? The Latvian dudes, very, very kind of
Coach Ray.
Right, Coach Ray and Giannis, right? And then one of the other dudes that was very helpful was, what's the name of his channel? Like, Lethal Arms.
Oh, yeah. Paul Lynn?
Paul Lynn.
Yeah.
So Paul
Lethal
Lynn.
Arms. I think Lethal Arms, yeah.
Paul Lynn, Travis Bajent, they're like Voice of Arm Wrestling. Who else is one of those original dudes that I still listen to a lot?
I remember Michael's channel before he started getting popular, and it was just him and his green gym.
Right.
And they were like
so green.
pretty bad, boring videos.
Right.
But like I liked who Michael was, and his wife seemed really cute. It's good to see where they've blown up with,
Well, my whole problem is I'm trying to watch all this content and I'm listening to all these guys talk, but none of them are explaining the little things that you're like, I don't get it. Like the holding of the hand and the what you do and what you don't do and the timing and the what to look for with the refereeing. All those things are so interesting, and like no one can get it all so explained.
And they're so far down the rabbit hole, you know, like it's not, and it is, it's like once you start getting comfortable arm wrestling at a table and pulling your friends and then thinking of a tournament, that's when the other bag of tricks comes out, like what you're talking about, getting the advantage on the hand and the different angles. And
then after all that, there's your match in hand to hand, and then there's slips. So that's what it was. When I first got into Devin Larratt, I saw a lot of the Devin Larratt Juji videos. Because Juji was trying to learn, actually. And he was getting all the insider info from Devin Larratt, so we all got to watch how to learn.
Those are some of the best videos that taught me the most. Yeah. You know, like when they did a day in the life of an arm wrestler, and they went to Devin's house, and he was doing his little micro movements, and that was the first thing I bought. A multi spinner. It was the first arm wrestling attachment I bought. And I was like, you get that thing in the mail, and if you've never seen a video how to use it, it can be pretty confusing. Yeah, but like, Devin does a good job. He created the thing, so he does a good job.
It's an awkward as hell thing, but it makes sense once you hold it.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I wanted to mention is like once you slip, then there's the strap, and then it's like you got to figure out how a strap is mostly your whole game, unless you're a type of puller that can evade the strap and make people not get the strap, which that's not even a thing almost.
It is if you're super the cup. If you can keep someone from top rolling you and your fingers and everything can contain this, and you don't let someone pull out, that's how you beat the cup. That's how you beat the top roll.
Well, so that's getting a little technical for people who maybe don't know anything about it. Let's get right to the early stages. So one of these questions here is, what is different about it, arm wrestling, from what you did as a kid in the lunchroom? So how would you explain that?
I've been thinking about this, and I don't remember exactly how I arm wrestled in the lunchroom. I think it was for the way we did it in my high school, and we used to arm wrestle all the time. Study hall, football practice, all that. We just locked up in a hook, I believe. Yeah. I can remember correctly. Well, there was no
because top rolling didn't exist.
No, it was just literally lock up with someone,
bent wrist. Top rolling changed the game, didn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the history of it, but I would imagine yes.
That top rolling, I feel like it was an insider move where the real arm wrestlers did it. But in the lunchroom, you didn't know what a top roll was.
No, it was just bend your wrist with someone, and then you're locked in there, and then it was like, who quit first, Like if you're strong enough to bring them over.
But you never did this in lunch. You never did this, I don't think. You did this, right? Exactly. You pushed them down.
It was this.
Yeah.
It was there was some pulling involved, but it was all like... the way you break your arm.
So that leads me to my next question here. Isn't it cheating when you use your whole body?
I've heard this multiple times.
Right. It's a typical noob question. Why is it not cheating?
Because arm wrestling's not this.
Yeah.
We all know that when you get into it, and then you are standing on your feet. If you want to do this and you don't want to put your body into it, sit down arm wrestling.
Yeah.
They have tournaments. They have tables. Sit down arm wrestling. Then you're still putting a little bit, but there's I think a restriction on how far you can move your ass back, and it more is this what we did at the lunchroom. But regular arm wrestling, when you're standing up, you're connected to your whole body.
So there's one thing you brought up a really good point. I'm just going to say this: when you're standing up at a regular table, a regulation table, so you're both standing, the table is 40 inches high, and that height is made specifically, perfectly for a man or woman who's 6 feet tall.
Yep.
So if you're 6 feet tall, you're just right for that damn thing. And those of us who might not be 6 feet tall, or even some who are too tall, you're going to have to adjust.
Yeah.
Because that table is what it is. It ain't going to change.
Well, now, another aspect of it, there are risers, which is a platform to lay down for someone.
And what is that, like 3 inches or 4 inches?
I think it's 3 inches, I believe.
So you get an extra. If you're 5'4", you can now be 5'7".
Yeah. And 5'7" makes you 5'10". I think it's 3, maybe 4 inches. But I bought this book called How to Win at Arm Wrestling, or I forget who wrote it, but I have to bring it over for you. But it's funny watching the old videos. They didn't have risers back then. The shorter guys wore platform shoes, like the 70 platform shoes. So there was a guy with like
it was like they were
6 inches on that. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Isn't that funny? Like lifts.
Yeah.
Like as if they both is that you would treat it as if both of your legs were too short.
Exactly.
Because you ever seen that guy that had the one leg too short with the funny shoe?
Yep.
Now you're an arm wrestler. Both of your legs are too short. You got two funny shoes on. You know, that guy, the really short Canadian guy from the early 2000s that Devin Larratt hates. There's videos of him with those crazy shoes on. I wonder if that dude has those shoes in his closet.
Probably. If he was an arm wrestler and he was short, you know.
I mean, geez. It's like stilts. A weird stilt shoe.
Yeah.
I would say, let's end it there. We got so much more to talk about for future episodes. We're going to try to do this at least, like, let's say once a week or whatever. And there's matches out there that we need to talk about that are coming up. There's stuff going on. There's always stuff going on. But this first episode, I wanted to get like the idea of like who's a new arm wrestler, who's not really maybe participated yet, what's going on, why do you care about arm wrestling, why is arm wrestling for everyone? I think everyone should be arm wrestling, and these are the reasons why, and it's only enriching. And I
completely agree.
Yeah, it needs to shed a weird kind of a societal stigma that it has. I think it's hurting the sport, and I don't know what it is.
It's the bro thing, I think the toxic masculinity and like, there's a little bit of that floating around, but I think like
it's sort of like douchey guy thing, right?
Yeah, but like when you start doing it, you're like, we bring it back to community,
It's not, it's so not that, right?
Yeah, and then you start, it's like a brotherhood, or sisterhood. Like it's a community, and everybody wants to see each other get better. And
exactly, that's what it is. We're all watching each other get better week after week. That's what's amazing.
And come on, what's more fun to work out than arm wrestling?
Well,
other than sex.
I'll give you an example. So like the two of us, right? So like I only weigh 185 pounds right now. You weigh way over.
Probably 285.
Right, so you're 100 pounds over me, and we're arm wrestling. I don't care that you're bigger and stronger than me. I actually want my opponents to be bigger and stronger than me.
It's going to make you stronger quicker.
It's only making me stronger, right? So people may not understand like the logistics involved with why you would or wouldn't want to do it. There are no such things. All you do is you grip up with people and you feel different hands and you go for it.
And that's a simple thing. You just need other people, and if you want to do it professionally, a table.
Yeah. All right, well, we're here actually to train, which is our priority. So now we got this out of the way. Let's go train and let's go kick some ass, and we'll talk about it next time.
Let's get it, man.